What if I told you that the person who haunts your thoughts, the one whose face appears in your dreams, whose voice echoes in your quiet moments, whose memory follows you like a shadow, isn't there by accident? What if this mental visitor who refuses to leave, this presence that sometimes feels like a splinter in your mind, was actually carrying a message meant specifically for you? You're about to discover something profound, something monks have contemplated in silent meditation halls and ancient forests for over 2,500 years. This isn't just advice about how to stop thinking about someone. These are the wisdom codes of the human heart, passed down from the Buddha himself, a man who understood that our most persistent thoughts are not our enemies, but our greatest teachers. This guide isn't here to offer empty comfort or quick fix techniques that fade by morning. It's here to help you understand the deeper meaning behind why certain people take up residence in your mind, refusing to leave despite your best efforts. And the best part, you don't need to be a monk, a saint, or even particularly spiritual to use this wisdom. You just need to be human, a human who's ready to stop fighting against these persistent thoughts and start understanding what they're trying to teach you. So take a deep breath. What you're about to learn could change not just how you relate to that person who won't leave your thoughts, but how you understand your own mind and heart. Let's begin. There comes a moment when you realize that pushing someone out of your mind requires more energy than simply understanding why they're there in the first place. That's where we begin. Not with techniques for forgetting, but with wisdom for seeing clearly. After all, what exhausts us most isn't the presence of these thoughts, but our constant struggle against them, the way we fight what is already happening within our own minds. This is where Buddhist wisdom opens its hands to us, offering insights that might feel strange at first, almost counterintuitive. But these teachings contain something precious, the understanding that these persistent thoughts aren't a problem to be solved, but a message to be decoded. The person occupying your mind isn't just a random intrusion. They are there because something within you needs to learn, heal, or awaken. In Buddhism, this constant thinking about someone isn't dismissed as mere obsession or attachment, though those elements may be present. Instead, it's seen as a signal from your deeper mind, pointing toward unfinished business within your own heart. When someone takes up residence in your thoughts, it's as if your mind is saying, "Pay attention. There's something here you need to see." The first insight Buddhism offers is that our minds naturally fixate on unresolved experiences. Like a tongue returning to a chipped tooth, your attention keeps going back to this person because something remains incomplete. This isn't a flaw in your mental functioning. It's your mind's natural wisdom trying to heal itself. Your persistent thoughts are not the problem. They are your mind's attempt at solution. This understanding alone can bring relief. The fact that you can't stop thinking about someone doesn't mean you're weak or obsessed. It means your mind is doing exactly what minds do, trying to process, integrate, and find resolution. The question isn't how to stop these thoughts, but what they're trying to show you. Buddhist wisdom teaches that there are 7 distinct reasons why someone might refuse to leave your thoughts. Each represents a different facet of your relationship with yourself, with reality, and with the nature of mind itself. Understanding which of these reasons applies to your situation doesn't make the thoughts instantly vanish, but it transforms your relationship with them. Instead of unwanted intruders, they become messengers. And once you receive the message, the messenger often naturally departs. The first reason someone won't leave your mind is attachment disguised as love. This is perhaps the most common and most misunderstood pattern. In our culture, we often confuse intense emotional fixation with love. We believe that constantly thinking about someone proves the depth of our feelings for them. But Buddhist wisdom draws a crucial distinction. True love brings spaciousness, while attachment creates constriction. When attachment masquerades as love, your thoughts about the person aren't free and appreciative. They're clingy and desperate. You don't simply remember them with warmth. You mentally grasp at them, rehearsing past interactions or imagining future scenarios. Your thoughts carry an underlying current of need, the need for their approval, presence, or reciprocation. This need creates a mental loop that keeps them firmly anchored in your awareness. The Buddha described attachment as the primary cause of suffering. He observed that when we cling to people as if they were permanent, unchanging entities who could complete us, we set ourselves up for inevitable pain. People change, relationships evolve. Nothing external can ever truly belong to us. When we forget these truths, our minds become like hands squeezing too tightly around water. The tighter we grip, the more slips through our fingers. You can recognize attachment disguised as love by the quality of suffering it produces. If thoughts of this person bring a sense of lack, of something missing or incomplete within you, you're experiencing attachment rather than love. If you feel anxious, jealous, or desperate when they come to mind, that's attachment speaking. True love, even when tinged with sadness, carries an underlying peace, the recognition that you wish for their well-being, regardless of what they can give you. The second reason someone may persist in your mind is unprocessed emotion. Our emotional systems require completion. Feelings need to be fully experienced before they can naturally subside. When emotions around someone remain incomplete, whether it's unexpressed anger, unacknowledged hurt, or even joy you didn't allow yourself to fully feel, your mind keeps bringing them back into awareness, hoping to complete the emotional process. This is particularly common with relationships that ended abruptly, or situations where social constraints prevented you from expressing what you truly felt. Your mind is like a computer with too many open tabs, consuming energy because these emotional programs are still running in the background. Buddhist practice doesn't suggest suppressing these emotions or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it offers the radical approach of turning toward them with mindful awareness. When thoughts of the person arise, rather than focusing on the storyline about them, can you notice the underlying emotion? Is there anger, sadness, regret, longing? Can you allow that emotion to be fully felt in the body without adding commentary or judgment? There's profound wisdom in this approach. Emotions, when fully experienced with awareness, naturally complete their cycle. It's our resistance to feeling them, our fear of being overwhelmed, or our judgment about having them, that keeps them frozen in place. By bringing gentle awareness to these unprocessed emotions, you give them the space to finally move and transform. A Zen teacher once said, "The only way out is through." When it comes to persistent thoughts about someone, often the only way to freedom is through fully experiencing whatever emotions you've been avoiding. This doesn't mean indulging in emotional stories or dramatizing feelings. It means simply allowing them to be felt in the body with kind awareness. The third reason someone might occupy your thoughts is karmic entanglement. In Buddhist understanding, karma isn't cosmic punishment or reward, but rather the natural law of cause and effect in our actions and relationships. Certain relationships carry a strong karmic charge, a sense of unfinished business that spans beyond the obvious interactions. You might notice this in relationships that impacted you with an intensity that seemed disproportionate to their duration, or in connections that felt significant from the very first meeting. There's a recognition that goes beyond the surface, a sense that this person is catalyzing something essential in your growth. When someone won't leave your thoughts due to karmic entanglement, there's often a lesson or understanding trying to emerge. Your mind keeps bringing them into awareness because something remains incomplete in the learning this relationship was meant to facilitate. It's not about the person themselves as much as what they represented in your journey. Buddhist wisdom suggests that in such cases, the path forward lies not in forgetting the person, but in discerning the lesson. What quality were you developing through knowing them? What pattern were they helping you recognize? What growth were they perhaps unwittingly facilitating in you? When you can name the learning clearly, you often find that thoughts of the person naturally subside, having served their purpose as teacher. There's a story of a woman who couldn't stop thinking about a former friend who had betrayed her trust. For years, thoughts of this friend would arise, bringing waves of hurt and anger. She tried everything to forget: distraction, forgiveness practices, even moving to a new city. Nothing worked. Finally, while on a meditation retreat, she realized the lesson this relationship had been trying to teach her. She had abandoned herself before her friend abandoned her. She had ignored her own intuition, dismissed her own needs, and compromised her boundaries. The moment she fully grasped this understanding, the thoughts of her friend began to fade. The teacher had completed its task. The fourth reason someone persists in your mind is what Buddhism calls projection of the shadow. We all have aspects of ourselves that we've disowned or repressed, qualities we were taught were unacceptable or that we judge harshly in ourselves. Rather than facing these aspects directly, we often project them onto others who then become magnets for our attention. The person who won't leave your thoughts may be carrying a projection of your disowned qualities. If their confidence infuriates you, you might be projecting your own unexpressed confidence. If their neediness repels you, you might be projecting your own disowned vulnerability. Our strongest reactions often point to our deepest projections. This mechanism explains why we sometimes can't stop thinking about people we claim to dislike. The very qualities that trigger us in them are reflecting aspects of ourselves we haven't fully accepted or integrated. Our minds keep bringing them into awareness not to torment us, but to show us parts of ourselves that are asking for acknowledgement. Buddhist practice suggests looking carefully at what qualities in this person trigger the strongest reactions in you. What about them most captivates or repels your attention? Then, with honesty and compassion, ask yourself, where might this quality also exist within me, perhaps in a different form? This investigation isn't about blame, but about wholeness. By reclaiming these projections, you not only free yourself from obsessive thinking about the other person, but you also become more integrated and authentic. The parts of yourself that you've been encountering through them can finally come home. A monk once told a story about a man who was obsessed with thoughts of a neighbor he considered lazy and irresponsible. The neighbor would often relax in his garden while the man worked tirelessly. One day, the man fell ill and was forced to rest. As he lay in bed watching the clouds move across the sky, he realized that deep within himself was a longing for rest, for permission to simply be without constant productivity. The very quality he had condemned in his neighbor was one his own soul was craving. From that day, his obsessive thoughts about the neighbor began to fade. The fifth reason someone might dominate your thoughts is fixation on outcome. Often, we can't stop thinking about someone because we're attached to a specific resolution or outcome involving them: reconciliation, recognition, revenge, or some form of closure that we believe will finally bring peace. This attachment to outcome creates a mental holding pattern. Your thoughts loop back to this person again and again because your mind believes there's still something to be gained, resolved, or proven. You can recognize this pattern when your thoughts about them consistently lead to the same imagined scenarios or outcomes. Buddhist wisdom on this is both simple and radical. True peace comes from accepting what is, not from achieving a particular outcome. As long as you believe your well-being depends on something specific happening with this person, them apologizing, recognizing your worth, regretting their choices, or returning to you, your mind will remain fixated on them. The practice here involves a profound shift from attachment to outcome to acceptance of reality as it is now. This doesn't mean you approve of what happened or that you wouldn't prefer a different situation. It simply means you stop postponing your peace until some external condition is met. There's a Zen story about a monk who carried a woman across a muddy road, breaking his vow not to touch women. His companion monk said nothing at the time, but hours later remarked, "How could you break your vow and carry that woman?" The first monk replied, "I put her down on the other side of the road. Are you still carrying her?" In the same way, many of us continue carrying people in our minds long after the actual interaction has ended, weighed down by our attachment to how we believe things should have been. The sixth reason for persistent thoughts is spiritual magnetism. From a Buddhist perspective, we are drawn to certain people not just by personal preference, but by a deeper recognition. Some connections act as mirrors, reflecting back to us aspects of our own consciousness that we need to see more clearly. When someone remains in your thoughts due to spiritual magnetism, there's often a quality they embody that represents an important truth for your path. Perhaps they live with an authenticity you're being called toward, or they embody a freedom your soul recognizes, or even their suffering reflects something you need to acknowledge within yourself. These people act as catalysts, activating aspects of your awareness that were dormant. Your mind keeps bringing them into focus because the mirror they provide is still serving a purpose in your awakening. Rather than trying to forget them, Buddhist wisdom suggests examining what quality of being or understanding they represent for you. There's a beautiful Buddhist concept called Dharma friends, people who come into our lives to facilitate our spiritual growth, sometimes through harmony and sometimes through challenge. The person occupying your thoughts may be playing this role, whether they realize it or not. By recognizing and honoring this function, you can receive the gift they are offering without becoming fixated on the packaging it came in. A teacher once shared the story of a student who couldn't stop thinking about a woman he had briefly met at a retreat. He wasn't attracted to her romantically, but her presence had affected him deeply. Through meditation, he realized that she embodied a quality of gentle self-acceptance he was struggling to develop. His mind kept bringing her image back, not out of attachment, but as a reminder of this quality he was being called to cultivate. Once he recognized this, he could appreciate the teaching without becoming fixated on the teacher. The seventh and most profound reason someone won't leave your thoughts is what Buddhism calls emptiness teaching. This points to the ultimate truth that nothing exists as a solid, separate, independent entity, including yourself and the person you can't stop thinking about. What we take to be distinct individuals are actually dynamic processes, constantly changing and interdependent with everything around them. When someone becomes a persistent presence in your mind, despite all efforts to forget them, they may be serving as your personal teacher of emptiness. Through this relationship, your mind is being invited to recognize the fluid, impermanent nature of what you considered to be you and them. This is perhaps the most challenging teaching to grasp intellectually, but the most liberating when experienced directly. The suffering around persistent thoughts comes largely from believing in two solid entities, me in here and them out there, and then creating stories about what should happen between these supposedly separate beings. Buddhist meditation practices invite us to look more closely. When you examine the thoughts themselves, you discover they're not solid things, but momentary appearances in awareness, rising, changing, and passing like waves on water. The you, who's thinking, isn't a fixed entity either, but a flowing process of sensations, perceptions, and consciousness. Even the person you're thinking about isn't the static character your mind has constructed, but a complex, ever-changing being. As this understanding deepens, the sense of being a separate self, haunted by thoughts of another separate self, naturally begins to dissolve. What remains is simply awareness itself, in which all experiences, including thoughts of this person, arise and pass without creating a problem. A Zen master described it this way: "Before I studied Zen, mountains were mountains and rivers were rivers. While studying Zen, mountains were no longer mountains and rivers were no longer rivers. After enlightenment, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers again." Similarly, before spiritual practice, we see others as solid entities separate from us. During practice, we begin to recognize the fluid, interconnected nature of all things. And in awakening, we relate to people naturally again, but without the illusion of solid separation that creates suffering. These 7 reasons aren't mutually exclusive. Often, several operate simultaneously when someone won't leave your thoughts. Nor are they simply psychological explanations. They point toward the deeper nature of mind itself and our fundamental relationship with reality. Understanding them doesn't make persistent thoughts instantly vanish, but it transforms your relationship with those thoughts from struggle to insight. So what does Buddhism suggest we do practically when someone refuses to leave our thoughts? First and foremost, stop fighting. The more you resist these thoughts, label them as problems, or criticize yourself for having them, the more persistent they become. Instead, Buddhist practice suggests a radical shift in approach, from rejection to curious investigation. When thoughts of this person arise, rather than pushing them away, can you welcome them as messengers? Can you ask gently, "What are you here to show me? What remains unresolved? What am I being invited to understand or heal?" This shift from resistance to receptivity often changes the entire dynamic of your relationship with these thoughts. The next step involves bringing mindful awareness to the physical and emotional experience that accompanies thoughts of this person. Rather than getting caught in the storyline about them, can you notice sensations in your body? Is there tightness in your chest, fluttering in your stomach, heat in your face? Can you feel the emotional tone? Longing, anger, regret, confusion. Simply bringing awareness to these physical and emotional dimensions often allows them to begin shifting naturally. Buddhist meditation offers specific practices for working with persistent thoughts. One approach is called labeling or noting. When the thought arises, you simply note thinking and return to your breath or body sensations. You don't fight the thought or follow its storyline. You just acknowledge its presence and gently redirect your attention. This doesn't make the thought disappear immediately, but it changes your relationship with it. You're no longer caught in its grip. Another practice involves intentionally wishing the person well, regardless of your history or feelings toward them. This is called metta, or loving kindness meditation. When thoughts of them arise, you silently offer phrases such as, "May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you live with ease." This practice doesn't deny any hurt or anger you feel. Rather, it acknowledges that beneath those feelings is the basic human wish for all beings to be free from suffering. This may seem counterintuitive. Why wish well to someone you're trying to forget? But the wisdom here is profound. Often, what keeps us fixated on someone is not love, but subtle forms of aversion, resentment, judgment, or the need for their validation. By deliberately cultivating goodwill, you release these forms of aversion that have been binding you to them. It's like putting down a heavy weight you didn't realize you were carrying. There's also the practice of conscious substitution. When you notice yourself caught in thoughts about this person, you intentionally redirect your attention to something wholesome and nourishing. Perhaps gratitude for the good in your life, appreciation for those who support you, or immersion in an activity that brings you fully into the present moment. This isn't suppression or denial, but a skillful redirection of your mental energy. Buddhist wisdom also emphasizes the importance of patience and self-compassion in this process. Persistent thoughts don't disappear overnight, especially if they're connected to deep patterns or significant relationships. Rather than expecting immediate results, can you approach this process with the patience you would show to a dear friend or a small child? Can you acknowledge that healing moves at its own pace and cannot be forced through willpower alone? There's a beautiful metaphor in Buddhism about the nature of mind. The mind is compared to the sky, and all thoughts, emotions, and sensations are like weather passing through it. Sometimes there are storm clouds of anger, sometimes the rain of sadness, sometimes the sunshine of joy. But the sky itself, vast, open, and luminous, remains unchanged by the weather moving through it. In the same way, the person who won't leave your thoughts is like a particular weather pattern that keeps recurring. But this weather doesn't define or diminish the sky of your awareness. No matter how persistent these thoughts may be, the open space of your consciousness remains untouched by them. As you practice seeing thoughts of this person as temporary weather rather than defining features of your mind, something begins to shift. You realize that you are not your thoughts about them. You are the awareness in which those thoughts appear and disappear. This recognition creates a profound sense of freedom, not because the thoughts have vanished, but because they no longer define or control you. There's a Zen story that beautifully illustrates this. A student complained to his teacher, "Master, I cannot stop thinking about a woman I saw in the village." The teacher replied, "That's strange. She's not thinking about you at all." This simple response highlights how our persistent thoughts often have more to do with our own mind's attachments than with the actual person we're thinking about. They exist primarily in our consciousness, not in external reality. Buddhist practice doesn't promise to eliminate all pain. Not even the Buddha claimed that. What it offers is freedom from the added layer of suffering that comes from fighting reality as it is. When you stop struggling against thoughts of this person and instead bring curious awareness to them, you may still experience the pain of loss or longing, but you'll be free from the additional suffering of resistance. There's a famous teaching story about this. A man was rowing his boat on a misty morning when suddenly another boat crashed into his. He became furious, ready to shout at the careless boatman, until the fog cleared and he saw that the other boat was empty, simply drifting with the current. His anger immediately dissolved. In the same way, when we see that our persistent thoughts are not personal attacks or problems to solve, but simply movements of mind, empty boats drifting on the river of consciousness, our struggle against them naturally subsides. This brings us to a profound paradox at the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Often, the fastest way to stop thinking about someone is to stop trying to stop thinking about them. When you fully allow these thoughts to be present without resistance, without judgment, and without the added storyline of what they mean about you, they gradually lose their grip on your attention. This understanding of allowing thoughts to be present without struggle connects to one of Buddhism's most profound teachings on the nature of mind, what the Buddha called the middle way. Not indulging in thoughts by following their storylines and becoming lost in them, but also not suppressing or fighting against them. Instead, finding that balanced middle path of aware presence that neither clings nor rejects. When someone occupies your mind, there's a natural tendency to swing between these two extremes, either obsessively following every thought about them, analyzing each memory and imagining future scenarios, or aggressively trying to push them out of mind, telling yourself, "I shouldn't be thinking about them," and forcing your attention elsewhere. Both approaches actually strengthen the thought's grip on your consciousness. The middle way suggests a different approach entirely, allowing thoughts of this person to arise without judgment, observing them with gentle curiosity, and letting them pass naturally without either indulging or suppressing them. This stance of non-reactive awareness creates space around the thoughts. They no longer feel so solid or demanding of your attention. A Zen teacher once compared this process to dealing with a tantruming child. If you give in to every demand, the tantrums continue. If you respond with anger and punishment, the tantrums intensify. But if you remain calmly present, neither indulging nor rejecting, the child eventually calms down naturally. Our thoughts work the same way. When we respond to them with neither indulgence nor aggression, but with steady, kind awareness, they gradually lose their intense charge. This brings us to a crucial distinction in Buddhist psychology: the difference between awareness and attention. Attention is like a flashlight, focusing on specific objects of experience. Awareness is like the room in which the flashlight moves, the open space that contains all experience. When someone won't leave your thoughts, your attention keeps getting pulled to them, but your awareness remains free and spacious. The practice is to shift your identity from the focused beam of attention to the open space of awareness itself. From this perspective, thoughts about the person are simply objects appearing in your consciousness, like furniture in a room, rather than defining who you are or controlling your experience. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear. This shift in perspective is not just philosophical, it has profound practical implications. When you no longer identify with thoughts about this person as my thoughts that say something about me, they lose much of their emotional grip. They become passing phenomena rather than personal possessions or problems. There's a beautiful metaphor in Thai Buddhist tradition that illustrates this. Ajahn Chah, a renowned meditation master, would hold up his teacup and say, "This cup is already broken." He meant that in reality, all things are impermanent. The cup will eventually break, chip, or be lost. By seeing it as already broken, he could enjoy using it fully without the suffering that comes from attachment. In the same way, the relationship with the person you can't stop thinking about is already broken in the sense that all relationships are ultimately impermanent. Nothing lasts unchanged forever. By acknowledging this truth, not as a cause for despair, but as a doorway to freedom, you can hold the relationship more lightly in your mind. This perspective connects to another essential Buddhist teaching, the truth of impermanence or anicca. Everything in existence is in constant flux, continuously changing. The person you're thinking about is not the same person they were a year ago or even a moment ago. Your memories of them are not the actual person, but mental images frozen in time. And you yourself are changing too, moment by moment. When thoughts of someone persist, there's often an underlying assumption that both you and they are fixed, unchanging entities. I am this way, they are that way, and our relationship is defined by what happened. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to see through this illusion of permanence. The you who is thinking about them now is not identical to the you who knew them then. They too have changed in ways you cannot fully know. This recognition of impermanence doesn't make memories disappear, but it softens their emotional intensity. It reminds us that we're not actually relating to the person as they are now, but to our mental construction of them based on past interactions. This mental image has become frozen in our minds, while the actual person continues to change and evolve beyond our awareness. There's a story about a monk who struggled with constant thoughts of a woman he had known before joining the monastery. Every time her face appeared in his mind, he would berate himself for his lack of spiritual progress. This internal conflict only made the thoughts more persistent and painful. Finally, he confessed his struggle to his teacher, who offered unexpected advice. The next time you think of her, don't push her away. Bow to her image in your mind and say, "Thank you for teaching me about attachment. May you be well." This simple shift in approach, from rejection to grateful acknowledgement, gradually transformed the monk's relationship with these thoughts until they no longer caused suffering. This practice of meeting difficult thoughts with gratitude rather than resistance connects to the Buddhist understanding of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but perhaps more accurately understood as unsatisfactoriness or stress. The Buddha taught that dukkha arises not from difficult experiences themselves, but from our relationship to those experiences, specifically from craving for things to be different than they are. When someone won't leave your thoughts, the suffering comes not primarily from the thoughts themselves, but from your resistance to them, the wish that they weren't happening, the story that something is wrong with you for having them, the craving for a mind free from their presence. But what if nothing needs to be fixed? What if these persistent thoughts are not obstacles to your well-being, but doorways to deeper understanding? This doesn't mean indulging in obsessive thinking or glorifying painful fixations. It means recognizing that the path through difficult mental states is rarely the one that fights against their existence. The invitation is to meet what arises with kind awareness, neither pushing it away nor getting lost in its storyline. There's a powerful metaphor in Tibetan Buddhism about this process. Difficult emotions and persistent thoughts are compared to a stick thrown to a dog. The dog chases after the stick, grabs it, and brings it back, ready to repeat the game endlessly. But a wise old dog simply watches the stick being thrown without giving chase. In the same way, we can learn to observe thoughts about someone arising without immediately chasing after them, engaging with them, or trying to fetch them back to consciousness. The Buddha offered specific practices for working with what he called the hindrances, mental states that obscure clear seeing. When thoughts about someone come with strong desire or aversion, two primary hindrances, he suggested several approaches. First, simply being aware of the hindrance as it arises without judgment. Second, investigating its nature. How does it feel in the body? What beliefs support it? How does it change when observed closely? Third, turning attention to its opposite quality. If there's anger, cultivating kindness. If there's craving, contemplating contentment. These practices don't aim to eliminate thoughts about the person, but to transform your relationship with those thoughts. The goal isn't a mind empty of memories or impressions, but a mind spacious enough that no thought, however persistent, can cause lasting suffering. There's a beautiful teaching from the Zen tradition that speaks to this spaciousness. A monk asked his teacher, "How do I practice when it's hot?" The teacher replied, "Be the heat." The monk then asked, "How do I practice when it's cold?" The teacher said, "Be the cold." This direct, intimate meeting with experience, without the buffer of resistance or commentary, points to the heart of working with persistent thoughts. Can you simply be with these thoughts when they arise, neither pushing them away, nor becoming lost in them? This intimate meeting with experience connects to what Buddhism calls bare attention, the capacity to observe what's happening without the usual filters of judgment, preference, or story. When thoughts of someone arise, can you notice them with this quality of bare attention? Thinking is happening, memory is present, longing is arising. This simple, direct acknowledgement without elaboration allows thoughts to be as they are without adding layers of meaning or resistance. The Buddha compared this quality of mind to a mirror, which clearly reflects whatever stands before it without clinging to the reflection or pushing it away. The mirror doesn't prefer certain images or resist others. It simply reflects what is present. In the same way, your awareness can reflect thoughts of this person without preference or resistance, allowing them to appear and disappear naturally. This mirror-like quality of mind is not cold or detached. It's intimately engaged with experience while remaining unentangled. It's like being fully immersed in a movie while simultaneously knowing it's just light projected on a screen. You can feel the emotions, follow the story, and still maintain the clear recognition that what you're experiencing is not solid reality, but a temporary appearance in consciousness. This brings us to another key insight from Buddhist psychology: the understanding that all experiences, including persistent thoughts about someone, are composite and conditionally arisen. They don't appear randomly or exist independently. They arise from specific causes and conditions. When someone won't leave your thoughts, Buddhist wisdom invites us to investigate the conditions that give rise to these thoughts rather than fighting against the thoughts themselves. What situations, physical states, or emotions tend to trigger remembrance? Is it loneliness, stress, similar environments, certain songs, or scents? By recognizing these conditions, you gain insight into the thought pattern's nature and more freedom in relation to it. There's a teaching story about this. A woman was constantly thinking about a former partner, despite years of separation. Through mindful observation, she noticed these thoughts arose most strongly when she felt vulnerable or uncertain. The thoughts weren't really about her ex at all. They were her mind's conditioned response to vulnerability, a habitual pattern of seeking comfort in the familiar, even if that familiar was ultimately painful. Once she recognized this pattern, she could address the underlying vulnerability directly, rather than getting caught in thoughts about her ex. Often what appears to be fixation on a person is actually pointing towards something more fundamental, a core belief about yourself, a developmental need that wasn't met, a value you're being called to embody, or a pattern you're being invited to recognize. The person becomes a symbol or vehicle for this deeper process, which is why simply trying to forget them rarely works. There's a beautiful metaphor from Tibetan Buddhism that helps illustrate this. Difficult emotions and persistent thoughts are compared to letters arriving in the mail. Most of us either tear open the letters immediately, getting caught in their contents, indulgence, or throw them away unopened, trying to pretend they never arrived, suppression. The middle way is to acknowledge receipt of the letter, open it carefully, read its message with discernment, and then decide how to respond. When thoughts of someone persist despite your efforts to move on, the invitation is to open the letter, to look more deeply at what message these thoughts might be carrying. Often they contain important information about your own heart, your unmet needs, your personal growth edges, or the wisdom that's trying to emerge through this relationship. When you receive the message, the messenger can often move on, having completed its task. This brings us to an essential question in Buddhist practice. Who is the thinker of these thoughts? When you say, "I can't stop thinking about them," who is the I that seems separate from and troubled by these thoughts? Is there really a separate self who owns or controls the thinking process? Or is that sense of separate self actually constructed by thought itself? Buddhist meditation invites us to investigate this question directly, not as philosophical speculation, but as lived experience. When thoughts of someone arise, can you notice the sense of I that seems to be thinking them? Can you observe how this I is itself a mental construction, a thought arising in awareness, just like the thoughts about the other person? This investigation into the nature of self touches on what Buddhism calls anatta, or not self, the understanding that what we take to be a solid, continuous, independent self is actually a process, a flow of changing experiences without a fixed center or controller. The sense of being a separate self, thinking about another separate self, is an appearance in consciousness, not ultimate reality. As this understanding deepens, there's a natural relaxation of the grip of persistent thoughts. If there's no solid I being haunted by thoughts of a solid them, then the whole dynamic shifts. What remains is simply awareness in which thoughts arise and pass, without creating a problem or defining an identity. A Zen master expressed this with elegant simplicity. Let thoughts come and let thoughts go. Just don't serve them tea. You don't need to eliminate thoughts about someone, nor do you need to entertain them with elaboration and storylines. You can simply let them come and go in the open space of awareness, without making them into a problem or an identity. This perspective doesn't mean dissociating from your experience or pretending not to care. It's not about becoming cold or detached from your feelings. Rather, it's about recognizing the fluid, impermanent nature of all experience, including your thoughts and emotions about this person. It's about seeing that you are not defined or limited by these thoughts, even when they persist. There's a powerful practice in Tibetan Buddhism called Tonglen that works directly with difficult thoughts and emotions. Instead of trying to get rid of the pain of obsessive thinking, you intentionally breathe it in. Not just your own pain, but the pain of everyone who has ever suffered from similar thoughts. And as you breathe out, you imagine sending relief and space to all beings caught in obsessive thinking. This practice transforms isolation into connection. The pain of persistent thoughts about someone is not just your private burden. It's part of the universal human experience of attachment and loss. By connecting your personal suffering to this wider dimension, the thoughts lose some of their personal sting and become a gateway to compassion. Buddhism also offers practical guidance for working with persistent thoughts during formal meditation practice. When sitting in meditation, thoughts of this person will likely arise with even more prominence, since the usual distractions are reduced. Rather than seeing this as a problem, you can use the structure of meditation to relate to these thoughts with greater awareness. One approach is to label thoughts as they arise: thinking, remembering, planning, judging. This simple noting helps create a bit of space between yourself and the thought content, reducing identification with the storyline. You're not suppressing the thoughts or trying to make them go away. You're simply acknowledging their presence and returning to your meditation object, whether that's the breath, body sensations, or open awareness. Another approach involves using the breath as an anchor when thoughts become overwhelming. Feeling the physical sensations of breathing brings attention back to present moment experience, interrupting the tendency to get lost in mental stories about the past or future. The breath is always available as a refuge from obsessive thinking, a way to ground yourself in the reality of now rather than the mental constructions about then. There's also the practice of deliberately expanding awareness to include both the thoughts and the space around them. Rather than focusing narrowly on either suppressing or analyzing the thoughts, you open your awareness to hold them within a larger field of consciousness. Like stepping back to see not just the single tree that's captured your attention, but the entire forest. This wider perspective helps release the fixation on particular thought content. A meditation teacher once offered this guidance: don't push the river and don't dam it up. Just sit on the bank and watch it flow. In the same way, you can learn to observe the flow of thoughts about this person without either pushing them away or damming them up with resistance. This watching itself gradually transforms the relationship with thinking. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, especially with deeply conditioned thought patterns or significant relationships. Buddhist practice emphasizes patience and persistence, qualities that become themselves objects of cultivation. Each time you notice yourself caught in thoughts and gently return to awareness, you're strengthening neural pathways of presence that gradually become more accessible than the old pathways of obsession. Think of it like creating a new trail through a dense forest. At first, the old path of obsessive thinking is wide and well-worn, easy to fall into without realizing it. The new path of aware presence is barely visible, requiring conscious effort to follow. But with consistent practice, each time you choose the new path, it becomes a little clearer, a little more established. Eventually, it may become the default route, the way your mind naturally moves when thoughts of this person arise. This process embodies what Buddhism calls bhavana, or cultivation, the gradual development of beneficial qualities and habits of mind through intentional practice. Rather than expecting instant results or beating yourself up when old patterns re-emerge, you recognize that transformation is a gradual process of cultivation, like growing a garden from seeds. There's a beautiful teaching story about this gradual nature of practice. A young monk complained to his teacher that despite years of meditation, disturbing thoughts still arose in his mind. The teacher took him to a stream and asked him to stir up the muddy bottom with a stick. The water became cloudy and opaque. Then the teacher said, "Now stop stirring and watch." Gradually, the mud settled and the water became clear again. "Your mind is like this water," the teacher explained. "When you stop stirring it up with constant engagement with thoughts, the natural clarity of awareness reveals itself. This natural clarity is always present, even when thoughts seem most persistent and troubling. The practice is not to create clarity where there was none, but to allow the mud of obsessive thinking to settle so that the inherent clarity of awareness can shine through." Here's another aspect of Buddhist wisdom that's particularly relevant to persistent thoughts about someone: the understanding of dependent origination or interdependence. No person exists as a separate, independent entity. Each of us is a node in a vast web of relationships, conditions, and causes. The person you're thinking about was shaped by countless influences: their parents, culture, experiences, genetics, as were you. When we see others and ourselves through this lens of interdependence, there's a natural softening of rigid judgments and fixed identities. The person who hurt you was themselves conditioned by factors beyond their control. The qualities that attracted you to someone were not solely theirs, but arose from the interaction of many conditions. And your own persistent thoughts are similarly conditioned. Not personal failings, but natural movements of a mind shaped by past experiences. This perspective doesn't eliminate responsibility, but it places it within a wider context of understanding. It allows you to hold both yourself and the other person with greater compassion, recognizing that we're all caught in these webs of conditioning, doing our best with the consciousness available to us at any given moment. A Buddhist teacher expressed this beautifully. If you want to understand why you keep thinking about someone, look deeply into the nature of your own mind. If you want to understand your own mind, look deeply into everything that has shaped it. And if you want to understand what has shaped your mind, look deeply into the entire universe, for there is nothing that is not connected to your experience. This vast perspective can be liberating when caught in seemingly personal obsessions. The thoughts that feel so intimate and defining are actually movements in a much larger field, connected to countless conditions beyond what we typically consider personal. Seeing this doesn't make the thoughts disappear, but it helps us hold them more lightly, with less identification and suffering. Another important Buddhist teaching for working with persistent thoughts is the distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is the inevitable experience of loss, difficulty, and change that comes with being human. Suffering is what we add to pain through resistance, judgment, and fixation. When someone won't leave your thoughts, the fact of remembering them might be unavoidable pain, but the struggle against these memories, the stories you tell about what they mean, and the identification with them as problems, that's suffering. Buddhist practice doesn't promise to eliminate all pain. Not even the Buddha claimed that. What it offers is freedom from the added layer of suffering that comes from fighting reality as it is. When you stop struggling against thoughts of this person and instead bring curious awareness to them, You may still experience the pain of loss or longing, but you'll be free from the additional suffering of resistance. There's a famous teaching story about this. A man was rowing his boat on a misty morning when suddenly another boat crashed into his. He became furious, ready to shout at the careless boatman, until the fog cleared and he saw that the other boat was empty, simply drifting with the current. His anger immediately dissolved. In the same way, when we see that our persistent thoughts are not personal attacks or problems to solve, but simply movements of mind, empty boats drifting on the river of consciousness, our struggle against them naturally subsides. This brings us to a profound paradox at the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Often, the fastest way to stop thinking about someone is to stop trying to stop thinking about them. When you fully allow these thoughts to be present without resistance, without judgment, and without the added storyline of what they mean about you, they gradually lose their grip on your attention. A meditation teacher illustrated this with a simple demonstration. She asked a student to hold a heavy book with arms outstretched and not think about how heavy it was becoming. Of course, the more the student tried not to think about the weight, the more aware of it they became. Then she suggested simply acknowledging, "This is heavy," and noticing the sensations without resistance. The weight didn't change, but the experience of it transformed. Similarly, acknowledging, "I'm thinking about them again," without added judgment often creates space where there was constriction. This space allows for the natural healing process to unfold. Just as a physical wound doesn't need us to obsessively focus on healing it, it knows how to heal itself when we provide the right conditions. Our minds have their own natural healing capacity. By creating conditions of kind awareness and non-resistance, we allow our natural wisdom to operate, gradually integrating experiences that seem stuck or unresolved. Buddhist psychology understands that the mind naturally moves toward wholeness and integration when we stop interfering with its process through either suppression or obsession. Our role is not to force healing, but to create conditions that support it, like a gardener who doesn't make plants grow, but provides water, sunlight, and good soil so they can grow themselves. This trust in the mind's natural healing capacity connects to what Buddhism calls bodhicitta, the awakened heart that is our true nature beneath layers of conditioning and reactivity. This awakened heart is already whole, already wise, already free. Our persistent thoughts and emotional fixations are not evidence of brokenness, but of the mind's ongoing effort to return to this natural wholeness. From this perspective, the person who won't leave your thoughts is playing a role in your journey back to your own awakened heart. The persistent thinking is not an obstacle to your well-being, but a doorway to deeper understanding if approached with awareness rather than resistance. The very qualities you find most difficult in relation to them, perhaps vulnerability, attachment, anger, or longing, are pointing toward aspects of yourself that are asking for integration and acceptance. There's a beautiful teaching from the Tibetan tradition. Whatever arises in the mind is the path. Nothing needs to be rejected or eliminated. Everything that appears in consciousness can be used for awakening when met with clear awareness. This includes even the most persistent and troubling thoughts about someone who has impacted you deeply. This perspective shifts the entire orientation from getting rid of unwanted thoughts to using them as vehicles for deepening presence and understanding. Each time this person comes to mind becomes an opportunity to practice awareness, to investigate the nature of mind itself, and to cultivate compassion, both for yourself and for them. This compassion extends not only to the content of your experience, but to the process itself. Can you hold with kindness both the thoughts about this person and your reactions to having those thoughts? Can you have compassion for the mind's tendency to get caught in loops, for the heart's vulnerability to attachment, for the very human longing to understand and resolve what feels unfinished? A teacher once shared this guidance. Don't meditate to get rid of thoughts, meditate to get to know them better. In the same way, perhaps the invitation when someone won't leave your thoughts is not to force them out, but to get to know these thoughts more intimately. Their triggers, their emotional tone, the stories they carry, and the space in which they arise and fade. This intimate knowing often reveals that what appears to be a monolithic fixation, "I can't stop thinking about them," is actually much more complex and nuanced. There are many different kinds of thoughts about this person, arising from different conditions and carrying different emotional charges. Some may be memories, others fantasies. Some may carry anger, others tenderness. Some may be about the person themselves, while others are more about what they represent to you. By getting to know these thoughts in their complexity, rather than treating them as a single problem to eliminate, you begin to see them more clearly for what they are, movements in consciousness rather than solid realities. This clarity itself is liberating, even if the thoughts continue to arise. There's a meditation instruction from the Thai forest tradition that captures this approach. Let go of the good, let go of the bad, see what remains. When you let go of judging thoughts about someone as either good to be cultivated or bad to be eliminated, what remains is simply awareness itself, the clear, open space in which all experiences arise and pass. This awareness is your true home, already free from entanglement, even when thoughts and emotions move through it. This freedom within awareness points to one of Buddhism's most profound teachings, what's often called the wisdom of no escape. As long as you're trying to escape from thoughts of this person, you remain caught in a subtle form of aversion that actually strengthens their grip on your mind. True freedom comes not from escaping unwanted experiences, but from discovering the spaciousness that can hold all experiences without being defined by any of them. There's a story about a monk who was tormented by thoughts of a woman he had known before entering the monastery. He tried everything to escape these thoughts: intense meditation, fasting, reciting scriptures, even physically exhausting himself with work. Nothing helped. Finally, in desperation, he went to his teacher and admitted his struggle. The teacher smiled and said, "Stop trying to escape these thoughts. The next time her image appears in your mind, bow to it respectfully and say, 'Thank you for helping me practice.'" The monk was confused, but followed the instruction. Gradually, the thoughts that had tormented him for years began to lose their grip. By ceasing to treat them as enemies to be vanquished, they became instead opportunities for deepening awareness. This approach embodies what Buddhism calls the middle way, not indulging in thoughts by following their narrative, but also not suppressing or fighting against them. Instead, finding that balanced middle path of aware presence that neither clings nor rejects. This middle way is not a compromise or halfway point between extremes. It's a completely different dimension of relating to experience, one based in presence rather than reaction. When someone occupies your mind, there's a natural tendency to swing between these two extremes, either obsessively thinking about them, analyzing each memory, and imagining future scenarios, or aggressively trying to push them out of mind, telling yourself, "I shouldn't be thinking about them," and forcing your attention elsewhere. Both approaches actually strengthen the thought's grip. The middle way suggests something else entirely, allowing thoughts of this person to arise without judgment, observing them with gentle curiosity, and letting them pass naturally without either indulging or suppressing them. This stance of non-reactive awareness creates space around the thoughts. They no longer feel so solid or demanding of your attention. This space is what Buddhism calls emptiness, not a nihilistic void, but the open dimension of awareness itself, free from fixation or resistance. When you recognize the empty nature of both your thoughts about someone and the self who seems to be thinking them, there's a natural relaxation of the grip of obsession. Nothing solid is happening. There are simply patterns of energy moving through the open field of consciousness. A Zen teaching story illustrates this beautifully. A monk asked his teacher, "How do I enter the way of liberation?" The teacher replied, "Do you hear the sound of that stream?" The monk said, "Yes." The teacher said, "That is the entrance." In the same way, when thoughts of someone arise, the very noticing of these thoughts, the clear awareness that knows thinking is happening, is itself the doorway to freedom. Not by eliminating the thoughts, but by recognizing the awareness in which they appear. This awareness is always present, even in the midst of the most persistent thinking. It's like the sky that contains all weather, sometimes cloudy, sometimes clear, but always vast and unaffected by whatever passes through it. Your thoughts about this person are like weather patterns moving through the sky of your consciousness. Sometimes stormy, sometimes gentle, but never defining or limiting the sky itself. Recognizing this sky-like nature of awareness doesn't mean becoming detached or dissociated from your experience. It's not about numbing yourself to feelings or pretending not to care. Rather, it's about discovering a dimension of your being that can be intimately present with all experiences without being confined by any of them. This intimacy, without identification, is the heart of Buddhist practice. A meditation teacher once offered this guidance. Don't meditate to get somewhere else or to become someone different. Meditate to make friends with yourself exactly as you are. In the same way, the invitation when someone won't leave your thoughts is not to become a person who never thinks about them, but to befriend yourself exactly as you are, including these persistent thoughts and all the feelings they carry. This friendship with yourself is not self-indulgence or complacency. It's a profound acceptance that creates the conditions for natural transformation. Just as a plant grows best in the right soil, with adequate water and sunlight, your own natural wisdom unfolds most readily in conditions of kind awareness rather than harsh judgment or desperate striving. This brings us to another essential teaching for working with persistent thoughts, what Buddhism calls the Four Noble Truths. The first truth acknowledges that suffering exists. In this case, the suffering of being unable to stop thinking about someone. The second truth recognizes that this suffering has causes, specifically the craving for things to be different than they are, wanting the thoughts to stop, and the ignorance that sees thoughts as solid realities rather than passing phenomena. The third truth offers the liberating insight that when these causes cease, suffering naturally subsides. And the fourth truth provides the practical path that leads to this cessation. This path, often called the Eightfold Path, offers comprehensive guidance for working with all forms of suffering, including the suffering of persistent thoughts. It includes right understanding, seeing thoughts as impermanent conditioned phenomena rather than solid realities. Right intention, approaching these thoughts with kindness rather than aversion. Right speech, how you talk to yourself about these thoughts. Right action, how you behave when thoughts arise. Right livelihood, creating life conditions that support awareness. Right effort, the balanced energy of presence. Right mindfulness, clear seeing of what's happening. And right concentration, the steady focus that allows deeper insight. Each aspect of this path offers practical wisdom for working with persistent thoughts about someone. Right understanding helps you see these thoughts in the context of impermanence and interdependence, rather than as personal failings. Right intention brings kindness to the process, rather than self-criticism. Right speech transforms how you talk to yourself when thoughts arise. From harsh judgment, I should be over this by now, to compassionate acknowledgement, this is difficult and that's okay. Right action might involve creating healthy boundaries around activities that trigger obsessive thinking, like limiting social media checking or creating new routines that don't revolve around memories of the person. Right livelihood extends this to broader life choices that support well-being and clarity. Right effort is the balanced energy that neither suppresses thoughts nor indulges them. The middle way we've been exploring. Right mindfulness is the heart of the practice, the clear, non-judgmental awareness of thoughts as they arise, persist, and pass away. And right concentration is the steady focus that allows you to stay present with this awareness, rather than getting lost in the content of thoughts. Together, these 8 aspects of the path offer a comprehensive approach to working with persistent thoughts, not as isolated techniques, but as different facets of a unified way of being. They remind us that freedom from obsessive thinking isn't achieved through force of will or clever strategies, but through a fundamental shift in how we relate to our own experience. This shift is beautifully captured in a teaching from the Zen tradition. The Great Way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. As long as you're preferring not to think about someone, as long as you're judging these thoughts as problems to be eliminated, you remain caught in the very dynamic that sustains them. When you drop preferences and meet each thought with the same clear awareness, regardless of its content, the great way of freedom naturally reveals itself. This doesn't mean you won't still have preferences at a relative level. Of course, you'd rather not be consumed by thoughts of someone who causes you pain. But at a deeper level, you can learn to meet whatever arises with the same quality of presence, neither pushing away the unwanted nor grasping at the preferred. This equanimity is not indifference. It's the balanced presence that allows you to respond wisely to all experiences rather than react habitually. A meditation teacher described it this way: freedom is not found in the absence of challenging thoughts and emotions, but in their presence met with awareness. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not preventing your freedom. They're providing an opportunity to discover what true freedom really is. Not the absence of particular experiences, but the presence of awareness that can hold all experiences without being defined by any of them. This understanding transforms how you measure progress in working with persistent thoughts. Rather than counting how often the person comes to mind, or how quickly you can banish thoughts of them, you notice how your relationship with these thoughts is changing. Are you less identified with them? Can you hold them with more spaciousness? Do they carry less emotional charge? Are you less caught in stories about what they mean about you? These subtle shifts in relationship are the true markers of growing freedom. There's a beautiful teaching story that illustrates this. A student complained to his meditation teacher, "I've been practicing for years, but I still have disturbing thoughts." The teacher took him to a busy road and asked, "Do you hear the traffic?" The student said, "Yes, of course." The teacher asked, "Is the traffic inside your head or outside?" The student replied, "Outside, obviously." The teacher smiled and said, "Exactly. And you can relate to your thoughts the same way. They're just traffic passing by. You don't need to eliminate the traffic. You just need to stop mistaking it for who you are." This shift in perspective, from identifying with thoughts to recognizing them as traffic moving through awareness, is at the heart of Buddhist practice. It doesn't make the traffic disappear, but it transforms your relationship with it. The person who won't leave your thoughts is just one vehicle in this mental traffic, no more defining or problematic than any other thought passing through awareness. There's another powerful teaching from the Buddhist tradition that's particularly relevant when someone won't leave your thoughts: the practice of tonglen, or sending and taking. Instead of trying to get rid of painful thoughts, you intentionally breathe them in. Not just your own pain, but the pain of everyone who has ever suffered from similar thoughts. And as you breathe out, you imagine sending relief and space to all beings caught in obsessive thinking. This practice transforms isolation into connection. The pain of persistent thoughts about someone is not just your private burden. It's part of the universal human experience of attachment and loss. By connecting your personal suffering to this wider dimension, the thoughts lose some of their personal sting and become a gateway to compassion. A teacher described it this way: when you feel the sharp pain of obsessive thinking, remember that countless others feel this exact same pain right now. Breathe in for all of us, acknowledging our shared human struggle. Breathe out, sending relief to everyone caught in these thought patterns. This practice doesn't eliminate thoughts about the person, but it changes their meaning. From personal torment to a bridge of compassion, connecting you with others. This connection with others points to another essential Buddhist teaching for working with persistent thoughts: the understanding that you are not alone in this struggle. The Buddha himself acknowledged that difficult thoughts and emotions arise for everyone, even those with years of meditation practice. What distinguishes the wise practitioner is not the absence of such thoughts, but the way they're met, with awareness rather than identification, with compassion rather than judgment. There's a beautiful teaching from the Thai forest tradition that captures this. The untrained mind is like a dog that chases every stick thrown. It runs here and there, exhausting itself. The trained mind sees the stick, but doesn't chase it. It stays at ease in its own nature. This doesn't mean the trained mind no longer sees the stick. Thoughts of the person still arise, but it no longer feels compelled to chase after them, to elaborate on them, or to define itself by them. This capacity to see without chasing develops gradually through consistent practice. Each time you notice yourself caught in thoughts about someone and gently return to awareness, you're strengthening this capacity. It's like building a muscle. At first, it requires conscious effort, and you may relapse into old patterns frequently, but with practice, presence becomes more natural and accessible. A meditation teacher used this metaphor. Imagine you're learning to play the piano. At first, every note requires conscious attention, and you make many mistakes. But with practice, your fingers begin to know their way around the keyboard. You don't have to think about each note. Playing becomes more natural and flowing. Working with persistent thoughts is similar. At first, it takes conscious effort to notice when you're caught and to return to awareness. But with practice, this movement becomes more natural until presence itself becomes your default mode. This development of presence as a default mode doesn't happen overnight, especially with deeply conditioned thought patterns about significant relationships. Buddhist practice emphasizes patience and persistence, qualities that become themselves objects of cultivation. Each time you notice yourself caught in thoughts and gently return to awareness, you're strengthening neural pathways of presence that gradually become more accessible than the old pathways of obsession. There's a teaching story about this gradual nature of practice. A monk was struggling with persistent thoughts and asked his teacher how long it would take before they stopped arising. The teacher asked, "How long have you been thinking these thoughts?" The monk replied, "For many years." The teacher nodded and said, "Then perhaps it will take many years for them to fade completely. But with practice, your relationship with them will change long before they disappear. They will arise, but they won't disturb your peace." This changing relationship with thoughts is the heart of the practice. The goal is not to never think about the person again, but to be free even when thoughts arise. To know yourself as the boundless awareness in which thoughts appear, rather than as a separate, self-defined and controlled by thinking. This freedom within thinking is what Buddhism calls liberation in the midst of conditions. Not a transcendent state beyond everyday experience, but the discovery of spaciousness right in the heart of your ordinary human life, including all its difficulties and attachments. It's the recognition that true freedom doesn't depend on controlling or eliminating particular experiences, but on recognizing the awareness that is already free regardless of what appears within it. A Zen master expressed this with elegant simplicity. Enlightenment is intimacy with all things. This includes intimacy with your own mind and heart, even when they're filled with thoughts of someone you wish you could forget. Instead of fighting against these thoughts in the name of spiritual progress, can you meet them with the same intimate awareness you would offer to any other aspect of reality? This intimacy doesn't mean indulgence or identification. It's the clear, compassionate presence that neither clings to thoughts nor pushes them away. the middle way we've been exploring. It's the willingness to be fully present with whatever arises, not because you enjoy painful thoughts, but because you recognize that presence itself is the path to freedom. There's a beautiful teaching from the Tibetan tradition. Whatever arises in the mind is the path. Nothing needs to be rejected or eliminated. Everything that appears in consciousness can be used for awakening when met with clear awareness. This includes even the most persistent and troubling thoughts about someone who has impacted you deeply. From this perspective, the person who won't leave your thoughts is not an obstacle to your well-being, but a doorway to deeper understanding if approached with awareness rather than resistance. The very qualities you find most difficult in relation to them, perhaps vulnerability, attachment, anger, or longing, are pointing toward aspects of yourself that are asking for integration and acceptance. This integration doesn't happen through analysis alone, though understanding can be helpful. It happens through direct experience, through feeling these difficult energies fully in the body, meeting them with compassionate awareness, and allowing them to move and transform naturally. This is what Buddhist practice calls embodied presence, not just understanding difficult experiences intellectually, but meeting them with the whole body-mind. A meditation teacher described it this way: don't try to think your way out of painful thinking. Feel your way through. When thoughts of this person arise, notice where you feel the impact in your body. Is there tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, heat in your face? Bring gentle attention to these physical sensations, allowing them to be exactly as they are. As you meet the bodily experience with kind awareness, you'll often find that both the sensations and the thoughts naturally shift and release. This embodied approach acknowledges that our thoughts about someone aren't just mental concepts, they're whole body experiences involving sensations, emotions, images, and energy. By meeting the full-bodied experience, rather than just the mental storyline, you create conditions for natural integration and healing. This healing doesn't mean you'll never think of the person again. It means that when thoughts arise, they no longer carry the same charge or create the same suffering. They become simply one more appearance in the vast field of awareness, neither particularly problematic nor particularly significant. The person who once dominated your mental landscape becomes just one of many characters passing through the movie of consciousness. A Zen teacher expressed this with a simple but profound metaphor. Your mind is like the sky, and thoughts are like clouds passing through it. Some clouds are dark and stormy, others light and wispy, but none of them define or alter the sky itself. In the same way, thoughts about this person may still arise, but they don't define or limit the vast awareness that you are. This recognition of your true nature as awareness itself rather than as the content of awareness is the heart of Buddhist practice. It's not a conceptual understanding, but a direct experience that becomes increasingly accessible through consistent practice. Each time you notice yourself caught in thoughts and return to awareness, you're remembering who you truly are beyond all mental constructions. This remembering is not about achieving some special state or becoming someone different. It's about recognizing what's already true, that you are not defined or limited by any thought, emotion, or experience, no matter how persistent or powerful it seems. The person who won't leave your thoughts has no power to confine the boundless awareness that is your true nature. A teacher once shared this guidance. Don't practice to get rid of thoughts or to become a different person. Practice to discover the freedom that's already here, regardless of what thoughts are present. This freedom is not conditional on the absence of particular experiences. It's the inherent nature of awareness itself, available in every moment, including those filled with thoughts of someone you wish you could forget. This unconditional freedom is what Buddhism points to as our birthright, not something to be achieved through struggle or striving, but something to be recognized and remembered in the midst of our ordinary human lives, with all their attachments, confusions, and complexities. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not preventing you from claiming this birthright. They're providing an opportunity to discover what true freedom really is. A meditation teacher expressed it this way: the thoughts you're trying to eliminate are the very doorway to the freedom you seek. Not because the thoughts themselves are freedom, but because the awareness that knows these thoughts is already free. Each time you notice, "I'm thinking about them again," you're simultaneously recognizing the awareness that is not bound by these thoughts. That recognition itself is the taste of freedom. This taste of freedom becomes increasingly familiar through practice, until you no longer measure your well-being by the presence or absence of particular thoughts, but by your capacity to rest in awareness regardless of what thoughts arise. The person who once seemed to have such power over your mind becomes simply one more appearance in consciousness, neither particularly problematic nor particularly significant. This doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent to the relationship or its impact on you. It means you're no longer defined or controlled by it. You can honor the significance of this person in your journey, while simultaneously recognizing that your true nature is not dependent on any relationship or experience. This balanced perspective allows both genuine human feeling and spiritual freedom. A Zen story illustrates this beautifully. A monk who had been practicing for many years was asked if he still experienced difficult emotions. "Of course," he replied. "Then what's the difference between you and someone who doesn't practice?" the questioner asked. The monk said, "For someone who doesn't practice, when anger arises, they become anger. When desire arises, they become desire. When fear arises, they become fear. For me, when anger arises, I know this is anger arising. When desire arises, I know this is desire arising. When fear arises, I know this is fear arising. I experience these emotions fully, but I don't become them. In the same way, when thoughts of someone arise in your mind, you can know these are thoughts arising without becoming identified with them as my thoughts that define who you are." This simple but profound shift in perspective, from being thoughts to knowing thoughts, is the heart of Buddhist practice. This knowing is not intellectual analysis, but direct recognition, the clear awareness that registers thinking is happening without getting caught in the content of thought. This awareness is always present, even in the midst of the most persistent thinking. It's like the screen on which all mental movies play, always there, regardless of whether the movie is a light-hearted comedy or an intense drama. Recognizing yourself as this awareness, rather than as the content of awareness, is what Buddhism calls taking refuge in Buddha nature, not as a religious belief, but as a direct experience of your true nature beyond all mental constructions. This refuge is always available, regardless of what thoughts or emotions are moving through consciousness. A teacher described it this way: the next time thoughts of this person arise, instead of focusing on the thoughts themselves, notice the awareness that knows these thoughts are happening. Rest in that awareness, allowing thoughts to come and go without following or resisting them. This awareness is your true nature, already free regardless of what appears within it. This resting in awareness is not a technique to make unwanted thoughts disappear. It's a recognition of what's already true, that you are not defined or limited by any thought, emotion, or experience, no matter how persistent or powerful it seems. The person who won't leave your thoughts has no power to confine the boundless awareness that is your true nature. As this recognition deepens through practice, there's a natural relaxation of the struggle with persistent thoughts. They may still arise, but they no longer create the same suffering because you're no longer identified with them or fighting against them. They become simply one more appearance in the vast field of awareness, neither particularly problematic nor particularly significant. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to your human experience or to the relationship that these thoughts represent. It means you hold this experience within a larger context of understanding, one that includes both the personal dimension of feelings and memories and the transpersonal dimension of awareness itself. A meditation teacher expressed it this way: you can honor the significance of this person in your journey while simultaneously recognizing that your true nature is not dependent on any relationship or experience. This balanced perspective allows both genuine human feeling and spiritual freedom. This balance is the heart of Buddhist wisdom, not transcending human experience in favor of some disembodied spiritual state, but discovering freedom right in the midst of our ordinary lives with all their attachments, confusions, and complexities. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not an obstacle to this discovery, but an opportunity to realize what true freedom really is. A Zen master captured this with elegant simplicity. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Before awakening, thoughts of this person arise. After awakening, thoughts of this person may still arise. The difference is not in the presence or absence of particular experiences, but in how they're met, with identification and resistance, or with clear, compassionate awareness. This clear awareness doesn't eliminate thoughts about the person, but it transforms their meaning and impact. What once felt like a prison of obsession becomes simply one more aspect of the ever-changing flow of consciousness, neither particularly problematic nor particularly significant. The person who once dominated your mental landscape becomes just one of many characters passing through the movie of awareness. And as this perspective deepens through practice, something unexpected often happens. The thoughts that once seemed so persistent and troubling gradually begin to loosen their grip naturally, without any effort to eliminate them. Not because you force them out of mind, but because you've stopped feeding them with the energy of identification and resistance. A meditation teacher described it this way: what you feed grows. What you resist persists. What you meet with awareness transforms. When you stop feeding persistent thoughts with the energy of either indulgence or resistance, and instead meet them with clear, compassionate awareness, they gradually lose their compulsive quality. They may still arise, but they no longer create the same suffering, because you're no longer identified with them or fighting against them. This natural transformation doesn't happen overnight, especially with deeply conditioned thought patterns about significant relationships. Buddhist practice emphasizes patience and persistence, qualities that become themselves objects of cultivation. Each time you notice yourself caught in thoughts and gently return to awareness, you're strengthening neural pathways of presence that gradually become more accessible than the old pathways of obsession. A teacher once shared this guidance. Don't measure your progress by how often the person comes to mind. Measure it by how quickly you notice when you're caught in thoughts and how kindly you return to awareness. This is the practice. Not eliminating particular experiences, but cultivating the capacity to meet all experiences with clear, compassionate presence. This capacity develops gradually through consistent practice, like building any skill. At first, you may find yourself lost in thoughts about the person for long periods, before remembering to return to awareness. That's normal, and nothing to judge yourself for. Each moment of remembering is a success, regardless of how long you were caught before that moment. As the practice deepens, you'll likely notice that you catch yourself more quickly when lost in thoughts, and that the quality of your response becomes more compassionate and less judgmental. You may also notice that thoughts about the person begin to arise less frequently or with less emotional charge. But these changes are side effects of the practice, not its primary goal. The goal is not to never think about the person again, but to be free even when thoughts arise, to know yourself as the boundless awareness in which thoughts appear, rather than as a separate self-defined and controlled by thinking. This freedom within thinking is what Buddhism calls liberation in the midst of conditions, not a transcendent state beyond everyday experience, but the discovery of spaciousness right in the heart of your ordinary human life. A Zen master expressed this with simple elegance. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. As long as you're preferring not to think about someone, as long as you're judging these thoughts as problems to be eliminated, you remain caught in the very dynamic that sustains them. When you drop preferences and meet each thought with the same clear awareness, regardless of its content, the great way of freedom naturally reveals itself. This freedom is not something you achieve through struggle or striving. It's your natural state, always available beneath the surface of mental activity. The practice is simply to recognize and remember this truth, moment by moment, regardless of what thoughts or emotions are moving through consciousness. A meditation teacher described it this way: freedom is not found in the absence of challenging thoughts and emotions, but in their presence met with awareness. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not preventing your freedom. They're providing an opportunity to discover what true freedom really is. Not the absence of particular experiences, but the presence of awareness that can hold all experiences without being defined by any of them. This discovery is not abstract philosophy, but direct experience. The lived recognition that you are not confined or defined by any thought, emotion, or memory, no matter how persistent or powerful it seems. This recognition doesn't make unwanted thoughts disappear, but it transforms their meaning and impact. What once felt like a prison of obsession becomes simply one more aspect of the ever-changing flow of consciousness. And as this perspective deepens through practice, the thoughts that once seemed so persistent and troubling gradually begin to loosen their grip naturally, without any effort to eliminate them. Not because you force them out of mind, but because you've stopped feeding them with the energy of identification and resistance. Like a fire that naturally dies down when no longer fueled, thoughts about this person gradually become less compelling when no longer fed by your struggle against them. This natural fading is not the same as suppression or avoidance. It's the organic result of seeing clearly that these thoughts are simply movements in consciousness rather than defining realities. When you no longer treat them as problems to be solved or enemies to be vanquished, they gradually lose their power to disturb your peace. A teacher expressed it this way: don't try to force thoughts out of your mind. Instead, create conditions where they naturally fade in significance. These conditions include regular meditation practice, cultivation of present moment awareness in daily life, development of compassion for yourself and others, and deepening understanding of the impermanent, interdependent nature of all phenomena. These practices don't target specific thoughts for elimination. They transform your relationship with all experience, creating an inner environment where obsessive thinking naturally subsides like a wave returning to the ocean. The person who once dominated your mental landscape gradually becomes just one of many characters passing through the movie of consciousness, neither particularly problematic nor particularly significant. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to your human experience or to the relationship that these thoughts represent. It means you hold this experience within a larger context of understanding, one that includes both the personal dimension of feelings and memories and the transpersonal dimension of awareness itself. A meditation teacher expressed it beautifully. You can honor the significance of this person in your journey while simultaneously recognizing that your true nature is not dependent on any relationship or experience. This balanced perspective allows both genuine human feeling and spiritual freedom. This balance is the heart of Buddhist wisdom, not transcending human experience in favor of some disembodied spiritual state, but discovering freedom right in the midst of our ordinary lives with all their attachments, confusions, and complexities. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not an obstacle to this discovery, but an opportunity to realize what true freedom really is. This balance is the heart of Buddhist wisdom, not transcending human experience in favor of some disembodied spiritual state, but discovering freedom right in the midst of our ordinary lives, with all their attachments, confusions, and complexities. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not an obstacle to this discovery, but an opportunity to realize what true freedom really is. When we learn to meet our persistent thoughts with clarity and compassion rather than resistance, something remarkable happens. The very thoughts that once tormented us become our greatest teachers, revealing aspects of ourselves that have been waiting for acknowledgement and integration. This doesn't mean we cling to these thoughts or indulge in them. It means we recognize their deeper purpose in our journey toward wholeness. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that nothing arises in our experience by accident. Every persistent thought, every emotional pattern, every challenging relationship carries a message for our awakening if we're willing to listen with an open heart. The person who won't leave your mind is there because something within you needs to learn, heal, or awaken through the mirror they provide. This teaching becomes especially powerful when we consider the Buddhist understanding of karma, not as punishment or reward, but as the natural unfolding of causes and conditions across time. From this perspective, significant relationships that leave deep imprints on our minds aren't random accidents, but meaningful connections with particular lessons embedded within them. A meditation teacher explained it this way: when someone affects you so deeply that they continue to occupy your thoughts long after their physical presence has gone, there's often a karmic dimension to the relationship. Not in the sense of cosmic punishment, but in the sense that this connection is serving an important purpose in your spiritual evolution. The thoughts persist because the learning isn't complete. This learning isn't about figuring out intellectual answers about why things happened as they did. It's about allowing the relationship to catalyze inner growth that might not have happened any other way. Perhaps this person is teaching you about boundaries or vulnerability or forgiveness or self-worth. Perhaps they're revealing patterns of attachment that have shaped your life unconsciously until now. Whatever the lesson, it continues to present itself through persistent thoughts until it's fully integrated. Integration doesn't mean the thoughts disappear completely. It means they no longer create suffering because you've received their deeper message. They become like a story you've read thoroughly rather than a mystery that keeps you awake at night. You can remember the story without being consumed by it. There's a beautiful teaching story about this. A woman had been haunted by thoughts of a former partner for years after their relationship ended. Despite meditation, therapy, and new relationships, his face would appear in her mind during quiet moments, bringing waves of regret and longing. Finally, during a meditation retreat, she had a profound insight. This person had awakened in her a capacity for deep love that she had never expressed fully, not just toward him, but toward herself and life itself. The relationship had ended, but the awakening it sparked was meant to continue. From that day, thoughts of him still arose, but they no longer brought pain. Instead, they reminded her to express the love that had been awakened within her. The thoughts became not a torment, but a gentle reminder of her capacity for openness. This transformation of meaning is available to all of us, regardless of the specific nature of the relationship or why the person occupies our thoughts. The key is shifting from, "Why won't these thoughts stop?" to, "What are these thoughts showing me that I need to see?" From this perspective, persistent thoughts become not problems to solve, but invitations to deeper self-knowledge. And here's something remarkable about this approach. When we receive the invitation and learn the lesson, the thoughts often naturally begin to fade or transform. Not because we force them out, but because they've completed their purpose. Like a messenger who can depart once the message has been delivered, thoughts about someone naturally subside when they've completed their teaching function. This doesn't happen overnight, especially with deeply significant relationships. The learning and integration unfold according to their own timing, not according to our preferences or schedules. Buddhist practice emphasizes patience with this process, not a passive waiting, but an active presence with what is unfolding within us moment by moment. A meditation teacher expressed it beautifully. Don't rush the river. The healing and integration that wants to happen through these persistent thoughts has its own organic timing. Your role is not to force the process, but to create conditions where it can unfold naturally. Conditions of awareness, compassion, and honest self-reflection. These conditions include regular meditation practice, which creates space around thoughts rather than getting caught in their storylines. They include mindful awareness in daily life, which helps you notice when you're identified with thoughts rather than observing them with clarity. They include compassion for yourself and the other person, which softens the grip of judgment and blame. And they include wise reflection on the impermanent, interconnected nature of all experiences, which helps you hold even difficult thoughts more lightly. As you create these conditions consistently, something begins to shift in your relationship with persistent thoughts. What once felt like an invasion becomes an invitation. What once seemed like an obstacle becomes an opportunity. The very thoughts that tormented you become doorways to freedom when met with awareness rather than resistance. This freedom isn't dependent on the absence of particular thoughts. It's the recognition that you are not defined or limited by any thought, emotion, or memory, no matter how persistent or powerful it seems. Your true nature is the boundless awareness in which all experiences arise and pass, not the temporary contents of consciousness. There's another profound dimension to why someone won't leave your thoughts, one that reaches beyond personal psychology into what Buddhism calls the interconnected nature of all beings. From this perspective, our mental connections with others aren't just psychological phenomena, but expressions of a deeper reality where consciousness itself is fundamentally interconnected. The boundaries we perceive between my mind and your mind are more permeable than our conventional understanding suggests. A meditation teacher described it this way: when someone occupies your thoughts with unusual persistence, sometimes what you're experiencing is a form of consciousness connection that transcends ordinary understanding. Your thoughts of them might be mirroring their thoughts of you, or perhaps there's an energetic resonance between you that continues beyond physical proximity. These connections aren't mystical or supernatural. They're expressions of the fundamental interconnectedness that quantum physics and contemplative traditions both recognize at the heart of reality. This interconnected view doesn't mean you should interpret persistent thoughts as evidence of destiny or cosmic significance. Rather, it invites us to hold our experience in a larger context that includes dimensions of connection we don't fully understand. Perhaps the person in your thoughts is there partly because there's a resonance between your consciousness and theirs that serves some purpose in both your journeys. Ancient Buddhist texts speak of what's called mind-to-mind transmission, the recognition that consciousness can connect directly with consciousness beyond the ordinary boundaries of separate identities. While modern interpretations vary, this tradition points toward an understanding that our mental lives aren't as private and separate as we typically assume. The boundaries between minds are more like permeable membranes than solid walls. This perspective doesn't diminish your responsibility for working skillfully with your own mind, but it does suggest that persistent thoughts about someone might sometimes be picking up on a genuine connection that exists at levels beyond ordinary awareness. Instead of treating these thoughts merely as problems within your individual psychology, you might consider them as signals from the interconnected field of consciousness that includes both you and the other person. A meditation teacher shared this insight. Sometimes when someone won't leave your thoughts, it's as if there's an invisible thread of connection that remains active. Not because you're failing to let go properly, but because at some level, your consciousness and theirs remain in communication. This doesn't mean you should reach out to them if the relationship was unhealthy, but it might invite a different relationship with the persistent thoughts themselves, perhaps seeing them as part of a larger conversation happening beyond ordinary awareness. This interconnected view is supported by certain practices in Tibetan Buddhism, where practitioners deliberately cultivate awareness of the connections between their own consciousness and that of others. These practices aren't about psychic phenomena or supernatural abilities. They're about recognizing the fundamental nature of consciousness itself as boundless and interconnected, rather than isolated and confined to individual brains. From this perspective, someone who won't leave your thoughts might sometimes be there, not just because of your own unresolved emotions or attachments, but because there's a genuine connection in consciousness that remains active. This doesn't mean you should interpret persistent thoughts as messages or signs that can lead to unhelpful fantasy or projection, but it might invite a more spacious perspective that includes dimensions of connection beyond personal psychology. A meditation teacher expressed it this way: when thoughts of someone persist despite your best efforts to move on, sometimes it helps to acknowledge the possibility that what you're experiencing isn't just your own mind spinning in isolation, but part of a larger field of connection that includes both you and them. This acknowledgement can itself bring a kind of peace, not because it answers all questions, but because it holds the experience in a more spacious context that allows for mystery. This mystery is part of the human experience. Our minds and hearts connect in ways that aren't fully explained by our conventional understanding. The person who won't leave your thoughts might be there partly because something in the deeper field of consciousness wants this connection to remain active, even if only in thought, because it serves some purpose in the unfolding of both your journeys. Again, this perspective doesn't absolve you of responsibility for working skillfully with your own mind. All the practices we've explored, mindfulness, compassion, clear seeing, and non-identification, remain essential. But it does invite a relationship with persistent thoughts that includes dimensions beyond personal psychology, beyond the narrative of, "I need to get over this person," or "There must be something wrong with me because I can't stop thinking about them." Perhaps what's happening is exactly what needs to happen in the larger unfolding of consciousness itself. Perhaps these persistent thoughts are not evidence of failure or dysfunction, but expressions of connections that serve purposes our ordinary minds can't fully comprehend. This doesn't mean romanticizing painful fixations or excusing unhealthy attachments. It means holding our experience in a context spacious enough to include dimensions beyond our conventional understanding. A meditation teacher described it beautifully. When we sit in deep meditation and really examine the nature of our thoughts, we begin to recognize that they don't belong to us in the way we typically imagine. Thoughts arise in consciousness the way waves arise in the ocean. They're movements of a larger field, not possessions of a separate self. The person who won't leave your thoughts is there as a movement in this larger field of consciousness, and this movement serves purposes that may extend beyond your personal story. This larger field perspective helps explain why some connections persist with unusual strength despite time, distance, and even our sincere efforts to move on. It's not just personal psychology at work, but patterns in the interconnected field of consciousness itself. Patterns that might include both you and the other person in ways neither of you consciously recognize. In some Buddhist traditions, particularly Vajrayana Buddhism, practitioners work directly with these interconnections through visualization practices, where they imagine sending healing energy to others or receiving blessings from enlightened beings. These aren't treated as mere imagination, but as ways of working directly with the interconnected nature of consciousness. The boundaries between my mind and other minds are recognized as more fluid and permeable than our ordinary perception suggests. This doesn't mean you should imagine sending energy to the person who won't leave your thoughts or visualize receiving something from them. Such practices could easily reinforce unhealthy fixation rather than genuine connection. But it does suggest that the Buddhist understanding of mind includes dimensions of connection that go beyond our conventional boundaries of separate selves. A teacher explained it this way: in the ultimate view, there's no solid boundary where my mind ends and your mind begins. Consciousness itself is fundamentally interconnected. The conventional boundaries we perceive between separate minds are useful for ordinary functioning, but they don't represent the deepest truth about the nature of awareness. Someone who won't leave your thoughts might be revealing something about this deeper interconnectedness. This interconnected view doesn't replace the psychological understanding we've been exploring throughout this teaching. Rather, it adds another dimension to it, suggesting that persistent thoughts about someone might be meaningful, not just in terms of your personal psychology, but in terms of patterns in the larger field of consciousness that includes both you and them. From this perspective, sending goodwill or metta, loving kindness, to the person who won't leave your thoughts isn't just a technique for changing your own emotional state. It's a recognition of the genuine connection that exists between your consciousness and theirs, regardless of physical separation or the status of your external relationship. A meditation teacher described it this way: when you practice sending loving kindness to someone who occupies your thoughts, you're working directly with the reality of interconnection. You're acknowledging that at the level of consciousness itself, there is no solid separation between you and them. This doesn't mean you need to reconnect in ordinary ways if the relationship was unhealthy. It means you're recognizing the deeper reality that transcends the conventional boundaries of separate selves. This practice isn't about romanticizing difficult relationships or excusing harmful behavior. It's about relating to persistent thoughts from the perspective of fundamental interconnection rather than isolated individual psychology. From this view, Your thoughts of someone aren't just your private mental content. They're movements in a shared field of consciousness that includes both you and them. This understanding provides another approach to working with persistent thoughts, not replacing the practices we've explored, but adding another dimension to them. Instead of seeing these thoughts as solely your personal psychological material to work through, you might relate to them as expressions of connections in consciousness that serve purposes beyond your personal narrative. A meditation teacher expressed it beautifully. When you sit in meditation and notice thoughts of this person arising, you can recognize them not just as your thoughts, but as movements in the interconnected field of consciousness. This recognition itself brings a kind of spaciousness that can ease the sense of personal burden or struggle with these thoughts. They're not just yours to deal with, they're expressions of connections in the larger field that includes both you and them. This spaciousness doesn't mean avoiding responsibility for your own mind. All the practices of mindfulness, clear seeing, and compassionate presence remain essential. But it does mean holding your experience in a larger context that includes dimensions beyond personal psychology. The person who won't leave your thoughts might be there not just because of your unresolved emotions or attachments, but because something in the interconnected field of consciousness wants this connection to remain active in some form. From this perspective, even the most difficult, persistent thoughts can be held in a context of meaning rather than just personal struggle. They become not just obstacles to overcome, but expressions of deeper patterns in consciousness itself. Patterns that might be serving purposes your ordinary mind can't fully comprehend. A teacher shared this insight. When someone continues to occupy your thoughts, despite your sincere efforts to move on, sometimes the most helpful approach is to recognize that there's more happening than just your personal psychology at work. There are patterns and purposes in the interconnected field of consciousness that include both you and them, and these patterns might be expressing themselves through your persistent thoughts. This recognition doesn't solve the practical challenge of working with difficult thoughts, but it does place that challenge in a larger context that can ease the sense of personal burden or failure. You're not just struggling with your own stubborn psychology, you're participating in movements of consciousness that extend beyond your individual self. From this larger perspective, the Buddhist practices we've been exploring take on additional significance. Mindfulness becomes not just a way of working with your own difficult thoughts, but a way of relating to the interconnected field of consciousness with clarity and presence. Compassion becomes not just a skillful response to your own suffering, but recognition of the shared nature of consciousness that includes both you and the person in your thoughts. The practice of non-identification, recognizing that you are not your thoughts, extends to recognizing that thoughts themselves don't belong to anyone in the way we typically imagine. They're movements in consciousness arising from countless conditions and causes, many of which extend beyond what we conventionally identify as our personal history or psychology. A meditation teacher expressed it this way: when we really examine the origins of any thought, including persistent thoughts about someone, we find that it doesn't come from a solid, separate self. It arises from countless conditions, not just your personal history with this person, but patterns of human attachment formed over evolutionary time, cultural shapes of relationship embedded in language and story, and movements in the interconnected field of consciousness that includes both you and them. Seeing this doesn't make the thought disappear, but it does transform your relationship with it. A meditation teacher expressed it this way: when you practice sending loving kindness to someone who occupies your thoughts, you're working directly with the reality of interconnection. You're acknowledging that at the level of consciousness itself, there is no solid separation between you and them. This practice can transform not just your own relationship with difficult thoughts, but the quality of the interconnection itself. This transformation doesn't depend on the other person's awareness or participation. It happens at the level of consciousness itself, which isn't constrained by the boundaries we perceive between separate minds. Your practice of sending goodwill affects the quality of the interconnection, regardless of whether they're consciously aware of it. This understanding provides another approach to the question of why someone won't leave your thoughts. Perhaps they remain present in your awareness, partly because the interconnection between your consciousness and theirs is still active and serving some purpose in the larger field. This doesn't mean you're meant to be together in a romantic sense, or that you should re-establish contact if the relationship was unhealthy. It means there's meaning in the continued mental connection that transcends your personal narrative about the relationship. A teacher shared this insight. Sometimes the person who won't leave your thoughts is there because there's still something unfolding between your consciousness and theirs at levels beyond ordinary awareness. Not because you're failing to let go properly, but because at the level of consciousness itself, there's a conversation or exchange still happening. This understanding doesn't solve the practical challenge of working with difficult thoughts, but it does place that challenge in a context of meaning rather than just personal struggle. This context of meaning includes recognizing that persistent thoughts might sometimes be expressions of healing or integration happening in the interconnected field of consciousness that includes both you and the other person. Perhaps your persistent thoughts are part of a process that serves purposes beyond your personal healing or growth. Purposes that include patterns of learning or understanding unfolding in consciousness itself. From this perspective, the Buddhist practices we've been exploring become ways of participating consciously in this larger unfolding. Mindfulness becomes a way of bringing clear awareness to the interconnected nature of consciousness. Compassion becomes recognition of the shared field that includes both you and the person in your thoughts. Non-identification becomes understanding that thoughts themselves don't belong to anyone in the way we typically imagine. These practices don't replace the psychological work of understanding your own patterns of attachment, projection, or unresolved emotion, but they do place that work in a larger context that includes dimensions beyond personal psychology. The person who won't leave your thoughts might be there not just because of your unresolved issues, but because there's meaning in the continued connection at the level of consciousness itself. This understanding doesn't make persistent thoughts disappear, but it does transform their meaning and impact. They become not just personal problems to solve or overcome, but expressions of connections in the interconnected field of consciousness. Connections that might be serving purposes your ordinary mind can't fully comprehend. A meditation teacher expressed it beautifully. When someone won't leave your thoughts despite your sincere efforts to move on, sometimes the most helpful approach is to recognize that there's more happening than just your personal psychology at work. There are patterns and purposes in the interconnected field of consciousness that include both you and them, and these patterns might be expressing themselves through your persistent thoughts. This recognition brings a kind of spaciousness to the experience of persistent thinking, not because it answers all questions or solves all difficulties, but because it holds the experience in a larger context that allows for mystery and meaning beyond personal psychology. The person who won't leave your thoughts might be there partly because there's something still unfolding in the interconnected field of consciousness that includes both you and them. From this spacious perspective, even the most difficult, persistent thoughts can be held with a sense of meaning rather than just personal struggle. They become not just obstacles to overcome, but expressions of deeper currents in consciousness itself. Currents that might be flowing in directions your ordinary mind can't fully comprehend, but that serve the unfolding of understanding or healing in ways that include both you and the person in your thoughts. This doesn't mean you should interpret persistent thoughts as messages or signs about your ordinary relationship with this person. Such interpretations often lead to unhelpful fantasy or projection rather than genuine understanding. But it does suggest that these thoughts might sometimes have meaning beyond your personal psychology, meaning that relates to the interconnected nature of consciousness itself. A teacher described it this way: in the Buddhist understanding, consciousness is fundamentally interconnected. The boundaries we perceive between my mind and your mind are useful for ordinary functioning, but they don't represent the deepest truth about the nature of awareness. Someone who won't leave your thoughts might be revealing something about this deeper interconnectedness, not in a romantic or mystical sense, but in the sense that consciousness itself moves in patterns that transcend our conventional boundaries of separate selves. This understanding provides another dimension to the Buddhist practices we've been exploring. Mindfulness becomes not just attention to your own experience, but awareness of movements in the interconnected field of consciousness. Compassion becomes recognition of the shared nature of being that includes both you and the person in your thoughts. Non-identification extends to recognizing that thoughts themselves don't belong to anyone in the way we typically imagine. These practices don't replace the psychological work of understanding your own patterns, but they do place that work in a larger context. The person who won't leave your thoughts might be there not just because of your unresolved issues, but because there's something still unfolding in the interconnected field of consciousness that includes both you and them. This unfolding doesn't necessarily require any action or change in your ordinary relationship with this person. It's happening at the level of consciousness itself, which isn't constrained by the boundaries of space, time, or separate identities in the way our conventional understanding suggests. Your practice of mindfulness, compassion, and clear seeing contributes to this unfolding, regardless of whether you ever interact with them again in ordinary ways. A meditation teacher expressed it beautifully. When you work skillfully with persistent thoughts about someone through practices of mindfulness and compassion, you're not just changing your own psychology. You're participating in movements of healing or understanding in the interconnected field of consciousness that includes both you and them. This participation doesn't depend on their awareness or involvement. It happens at the level of consciousness itself, which transcends our conventional boundaries of separate selves. This understanding brings a kind of dignity and meaning to the challenge of persistent thoughts. They're not just personal problems to overcome or evidence of psychological dysfunction. They're expressions of connections in consciousness that might be serving purposes beyond your personal narrative, purposes that relate to patterns of healing or understanding, unfolding in ways that include both you and the person in your thoughts. From this perspective, someone who won't leave your thoughts might sometimes be there not because you're failing to let go properly, but because there's still something unfolding between your consciousness and theirs at levels beyond ordinary awareness. Not in a romantic or mystical sense, but in the sense that consciousness itself moves in patterns that transcend our conventional understanding of separate minds. This understanding doesn't replace the practices we've explored. It adds another dimension to them. When you bring mindful awareness to persistent thoughts, you're not just working with your own psychology, but participating consciously in the interconnected field of consciousness. When you send compassion to the person who won't leave your thoughts, you're not just changing your own emotional state, but contributing to the quality of the interconnection itself. These practices become ways of relating wisely to the reality of interconnection, not just techniques for managing your own difficult thoughts. They acknowledge that at the level of consciousness itself, there is no solid separation between you and the person in your thoughts. This doesn't mean you need to reconnect in ordinary ways if the relationship was unhealthy. It means you're recognizing a deeper truth about the nature of mind itself. A teacher described it this way: in the ultimate view, consciousness itself is not divided into separate minds and yours. It's a continuous, interconnected field in which patterns of connection and communication occur in ways that transcend our conventional understanding. The person who won't leave your thoughts might be there, partly because there are patterns in this field that include both you and them. Patterns that might be serving purposes your ordinary mind can't fully comprehend. This perspective doesn't diminish your responsibility for working skillfully with your own mind. All the practices of mindfulness, clear seeing, and compassionate presence remain essential. But it does place that work in a larger context that includes dimensions beyond personal psychology. The person who won't leave your thoughts might be there not just because of your unresolved emotions or attachments, but because something in the interconnected field of consciousness wants this connection to remain active in some form. From this spacious perspective, even the most difficult persistent thoughts can be held with a sense of meaning rather than just personal struggle. They become not just obstacles to overcome, but expressions of deeper currents in consciousness itself, currents that might be flowing in directions that serve the unfolding of understanding or healing in ways that include both you and the person in your thoughts. A Zen master expressed this with elegant simplicity. The mind is like the sky and thoughts are like clouds. No matter how dark or stormy the clouds, they don't stain the sky. When they pass, and they always pass, the sky remains as vast and clear as ever. In the same way, thoughts about someone may move through your awareness, sometimes heavy and dark, other times light and wispy, but they don't define or diminish the awareness itself. Recognizing yourself as this sky-like awareness rather than as the passing weather of thoughts is the heart of Buddhist practice. It's not a conceptual understanding, but a direct experience that becomes increasingly accessible through consistent practice. Each time you notice yourself caught in thoughts and return to awareness, you're remembering your true nature beyond all mental constructions. This remembering doesn't happen once and for all. It's a continuous process of forgetting and remembering, getting lost in thoughts and waking up from their spell, identifying with mental stories and recognizing the awareness that holds all stories. This is the practice, not achieving some perfect state of thought-free consciousness, but cultivating the capacity to return to awareness again and again, regardless of what thoughts are present. A meditation teacher described it this way: the path is not about reaching a destination where certain thoughts never arise. It's about developing the capacity to meet whatever arises with clear, compassionate awareness. This capacity is always available, even in the midst of the most persistent thinking. It's not something you have to create or achieve. It's your natural state beneath the surface of mental activity. This natural state is what Buddhism points to as our birthright, not something to be achieved through struggle or striving, but something to be recognized and remembered in the midst of our ordinary human lives, with all their attachments, confusions, and complexities. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not preventing you from claiming this birthright. They're providing an opportunity to discover it more fully. There's a powerful practice in Tibetan Buddhism called Tonglen that works directly with this understanding. Instead of trying to get rid of the pain of obsessive thinking, you intentionally breathe it in. Not just your own pain, but the pain of everyone who has ever suffered from similar thoughts. And as you breathe out, you imagine sending relief and space to all beings caught in obsessive thinking. This practice transforms isolation into connection. The pain of persistent thoughts about someone is not just your private burden. It's part of the universal human experience of attachment and loss. By connecting your personal suffering to this wider dimension, the thoughts lose some of their personal sting and become a gateway to compassion. This compassion extends not only to others, but to yourself as well. The tendency to judge yourself for having persistent thoughts, to see them as signs of weakness or lack of spiritual progress, is itself a form of suffering that can be met with kindness. As a meditation teacher expressed it, be at least as kind to yourself as you would be to a dear friend struggling with the same difficulty. Would you criticize them for not being over it yet? Would you tell them they should be able to control their thoughts better? Or would you offer understanding and support for the very real challenge they're facing? This self-compassion is not self-indulgence or complacency. It's a wise recognition that harsh judgment doesn't help us grow or heal. It only adds another layer of suffering to what's already difficult. By meeting yourself with kindness when thoughts of someone persist, you create conditions where natural healing and integration can occur. And as this healing unfolds, something unexpected often happens. The thoughts that once seemed so troubling gradually begin to transform. They may continue to arise, but they no longer carry the same emotional charge or create the same suffering. Like a wound that no longer hurts when touched, thoughts of this person become simply one more aspect of your experience, rather than a source of ongoing pain. This transformation doesn't mean you forget the relationship or its impact on you. It means you hold it in a larger context of understanding, one that includes both the personal dimension of your specific history with this person and the universal dimension of human connection, attachment, and loss. From this broader perspective, persistent thoughts become not just personal torments, but part of the shared human journey toward wholeness. A meditation teacher described it this way: when someone won't leave your thoughts, you're being invited into a larger story than just your personal history with them. You're being asked to understand something essential about the nature of human connection, about how we affect each other in ways that transcend time and space, about how love and loss shape us into who we're becoming. If you can receive this invitation with an open heart, the relationship that once seemed only painful becomes a doorway to profound understanding. This understanding doesn't come through intellectual analysis alone. It arises from direct experience, from meeting persistent thoughts with awareness rather than resistance, from feeling their impact in your body, from witnessing their changing nature over time. As you practice this direct meeting with what is, insights naturally emerge that no amount of thinking could produce. These insights often reveal the deeper purpose of the relationship in your life journey, not as random suffering, but as meaningful catalysts for growth and awakening. Perhaps this person helped you recognize patterns of attachment that have shaped your life unconsciously until now. Perhaps they awakened parts of yourself that had been dormant or denied. Perhaps they showed you where your boundaries needed strengthening or where your heart needed opening. Whatever the specific learning, recognizing this deeper purpose doesn't mean you should be grateful for painful experiences or excuse harmful behavior. It means you can find meaning in even difficult relationships, rather than seeing them solely as misfortunes to recover from. This meaning-making is part of how humans transform suffering into wisdom. A teacher expressed it this way: when someone continues to occupy your thoughts long after they're gone from your life, there's often wisdom trying to emerge through the relationship. Not wisdom about them specifically, but wisdom about yourself, about your patterns, your needs, your capacity for growth and healing. If you can receive this wisdom, the persistent thoughts gradually transform from tormentors into teachers. This transformation of tormentors into teachers is at the heart of Buddhist practice. It's the recognition that our most difficult experiences, including persistent thoughts about someone, are not obstacles to our well-being, but opportunities to discover a freedom that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This freedom within difficulty is what Buddhism calls liberation in the midst of conditions, not a transcendent state beyond everyday experience, but the discovery of spaciousness right in the heart of our ordinary human lives, with all their attachments, confusions, and complexities. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not preventing this discovery. They're providing an opportunity to realize it more fully. A meditation teacher described it beautifully. When you can sit quietly with thoughts of someone who once caused you great pain, without getting lost in the storyline about what happened or should have happened, without pushing the thoughts away or holding on to them, simply meeting them with clear, compassionate awareness. In that moment, you're discovering a freedom that was always available, but perhaps never so clearly recognized until it was tested by difficulty. This testing through difficulty is not punishment. It's how the heart grows in wisdom and compassion. Just as physical muscles develop through resistance training, our capacity for awareness develops through meeting resistance in the form of challenging experiences and persistent thoughts. The person who won't leave your mind is providing a form of spiritual resistance training, strengthening your capacity to remain present and compassionate even when it's difficult. And as this capacity strengthens through practice, something begins to shift in your relationship with persistent thoughts. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once seemed like a prison of obsession becomes simply one aspect of the ever-changing flow of consciousness. The person who once dominated your mental landscape becomes just one of many experiences moving through the vast field of awareness. This shift doesn't happen through force of will or clever psychological strategies. It happens through consistent practice of the fundamental Buddhist teachings we've explored: impermanence, emptiness, compassion, mindfulness, and the middle way between indulgence and suppression. Each time you apply these teachings to persistent thoughts about someone, you're not just working with those specific thoughts, you're transforming your relationship with all experience. And this transformation is the heart of the path, not the elimination of particular thoughts or emotions, but the capacity to meet all experiences with clear, compassionate awareness. This capacity is your birthright, always available beneath the surface of mental activity. The practice is simply to recognize and remember this truth, moment by moment, regardless of what thoughts are moving through consciousness. A meditation teacher expressed it this way: the goal is not to never think about this person again. The goal is to be free even when thoughts arise, to know yourself as the boundless awareness in which thoughts appear, rather than as a separate self defined and controlled by thinking. This freedom within thinking is what Buddhism points to as our natural state, available in every moment if we know how to recognize it. Recognizing this natural state becomes increasingly accessible through practice, like developing any skill. At first, you may find yourself lost in thoughts about the person for long periods, before remembering to return to awareness. That's normal and nothing to judge yourself for. Each moment of remembering is a success, regardless of how long you were caught before that moment. As the practice deepens, you'll likely notice that you catch yourself more quickly when lost in thoughts, and that the quality of your response becomes more compassionate and less judgmental. You may also notice that thoughts about the person begin to arise less frequently or with less emotional charge. But these changes are side effects of the practice, not its primary goal. The primary goal is the recognition of your true nature as awareness itself, the vast open space in which all experiences arise and pass like clouds in the sky. This recognition doesn't make unwanted thoughts disappear, but it transforms their meaning and impact. What once felt like defining realities becomes simply appearances in consciousness. no more solid or significant than any other passing phenomenon. And as this perspective deepens through practice, the thoughts that once seemed so persistent and troubling often begin to loosen their grip naturally, without any effort to eliminate them. Not because you've forced them out of mind, but because you've stopped feeding them with the energy of identification and resistance. Like a fire that naturally dies down when no longer fueled, thoughts about this person gradually become less compelling when no longer fed by your struggle against them. This natural fading is not the same as suppression or avoidance. It's the organic result of seeing clearly that these thoughts are simply movements in consciousness rather than defining realities. When you no longer treat them as problems to be solved or enemies to be vanquished, they gradually lose their power to disturb your peace. A Zen master captured this with elegant simplicity. What you fight, you strengthen. What you resist, persists. What you meet with awareness, transforms. When you stop fighting persistent thoughts and instead meet them with clear, compassionate awareness, they gradually transform from apparent enemies into allies on the path of awakening. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, especially with deeply conditioned thought patterns about significant relationships. Buddhist practice emphasizes patience and persistence, qualities that become themselves objects of cultivation. Each time you notice yourself caught in thoughts and gently return to awareness, you're strengthening neural pathways of presence that gradually become more accessible than the old pathways of obsession. Think of it like creating a new trail through a dense forest. At first, the old path of obsessive thinking is wide and well-worn, easy to fall into without realizing it. The new path of aware presence is barely visible, requiring conscious effort to follow. But with consistent practice, each time you choose the new path, it becomes a little clearer, a little more established. Eventually, it may become the default route, the way your mind naturally moves when thoughts of this person arise. This process embodies what Buddhism calls bhavana, or cultivation, the gradual development of beneficial qualities and habits of mind through intentional practice. Rather than expecting instant results or beating yourself up when old patterns re-emerge, you recognize that transformation is a gradual process, like growing a garden from seeds. A meditation teacher used this metaphor. When planting a garden, you don't dig up the seeds every day to see if they're growing yet. You create the right conditions, good soil, adequate water and sunlight, protection from extreme conditions, and then trust the natural process of growth. Working with persistent thoughts is similar. You create conditions of awareness, compassion, and wise understanding, and then trust the natural healing process to unfold in its own time. This trust in the natural healing process is itself a form of practice. Rather than trying to force unwanted thoughts out of mind through sheer willpower, you create conditions where healing and integration can occur organically. These conditions include regular meditation practice, mindful awareness in daily life, cultivation of compassion for yourself and others, and deepening understanding of the impermanent, interconnected nature of all phenomena. As you create these conditions consistently, the relationship with persistent thoughts gradually transforms. What once felt like an invasion becomes an invitation. What once seemed like an obstacle becomes an opportunity. The very thoughts that tormented you become doorways to freedom when met with awareness rather than resistance. And this freedom is what Buddhist practice points to as our birthright, not something to be achieved through struggle or striving, but something to be recognized and remembered in the midst of our ordinary human lives with all their attachments, confusions, and complexities. The person who won't leave your thoughts is not preventing you from claiming this birthright. They're providing an opportunity to discover it more fully. So now it's your turn. Which teaching from these ancient Buddhist wisdom traditions speaks most directly to your heart? Which insight feels like the one you needed most right now in your own journey with persistent thoughts? Leave a comment below and share your voice, because wisdom grows deeper when it's held together, and your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you want to keep walking this path of inner freedom together, make sure you subscribe to Moonlight Temple and turn on notifications, because this journey of awakening is just beginning. The next teaching might be the one that shifts everything for you, that helps you see your persistent thoughts in a completely new light. Remember, the person who won't leave your head isn't there by accident. They're carrying a message meant specifically for you, a teaching that can transform your suffering into wisdom if you know how to listen. And that wisdom doesn't just free you from obsessive thinking. It reveals the fundamental freedom that has been your true nature all along. A freedom no thought can ever disturb or diminish. Thank you for joining Moonlight Temple on this journey into the ancient wisdom that makes persistent thoughts not problems to eliminate, but doorways to a deeper understanding of yourself and reality. Until next time, may you meet each thought with the clear, compassionate awareness that is your birthright, and may you discover the freedom that has never been absent, only temporarily forgotten.